DeSanto Propane is 4 generations strong as a trustworthy, family-owned business with unmatched customer service. Go online at DeSantoPropane.com for more info or call toll-free at 1-800-752-4574 today. Since 1937, the difference has been DeSanto Propane.
Hey everybody, the NFL season is officially here, and that means time to prepare for your Buffalo football season ahead here on Bills Weekly, Season 2, guys. Looking forward to it. I'm Paul Russo, and again here in 2024, I'll be joined by Jim Sinicropi and Kyle Evans. We'll get you prepared each week for the Bills, who they're facing, and review the previous week's game. Gentlemen, Week 1 officially here in the NFL and for the Buffalo Bills.
Yeah, I would say this season, though, is definitely different than the last several, especially even last season when we covered, them for the first time on this pod. Just lots of roster turnover and just a lot of unknowns, even on the defensive side of things, in the wide receiver core on the offense. So it's going to be interesting to follow along, and I can't wait to get started.
Yeah, it's Labor Day last weekend. It's fall. It's football this weekend. College is already underway, but Thursday night we got an NFL game and a full slate of games on Sunday, a Monday night game. And a game or games on Monday night this week?
I think it's just the one, right?
Yeah, just one.
Oh, wow, yeah. Remember
Jets,
the past few
49ers.
years they've done a couple. Well, anyways, football's back. Weather's getting colder. Ready to go. Last year, the Bills kind of entered the season as like a Cinderella, or not even a Cinderella, kind of like a darling Super Bowl favorite. That kind of went away by midseason. This year, they're kind of flying under the radar. So I don't know. Are they Super Bowl quality or what here, in a crowded AFC? We'll talk about it, I guess, right?
Yeah, definitely. It definitely goes without saying the main, I think, theme, right, for the Bills is we've been all kind of talking through the summer about things, right, and coming out of the spring is the unknown. It's a really good word that you brought up, right, is the unknown of this team and what really lies ahead for it. We'll get into, obviously, the turnover of some of the roster. There's some big names no longer with the team and organization anymore. Guys coming in that big names maybe at one time or another that the Bills are looking to hopefully provide an impact where they kind of need it most. In a NFL and AFC that still is very Chiefs heavy, it does kind of make you wonder where the Bills kind of fall within that. And we'll get into all of it here because it's the first episode. We got to preview a lot. We got to go over a lot before we can really even get to talking about the Bills' Week 1 opponent and the Arizona Cardinals. So let's jump in a little bit of off-season and review type deal here. Name of the game, as we've said, change, turnover, whatever you want to call it. Go over a couple notable departures here. Like I mentioned, big names within the Bills organization and fan favorites. A lot of these guys, right? Jordan Poyer on the move, goes to in division rival in Miami. Micah Hyde, free agent. Nobody's signed him yet. Guys like Tre'Davious White, gone. Jordan Phillips, gone. Leonard Floyd, gone. Mitch Morse, gone. And Gabe Davis, gone. So a lot of familiar names and new places this year outside the Bills organization. Stephon Diggs, gone. It's a lot of faces that you're familiar with, not with the Bills anymore, and these new places kind of coming in. It's kind of crazy kind of thinking it like this, because I remember that last podcast we did, at least during the season, right? We did a couple of the draft podcasts and episodes that we did, but one of the last ones we did during the season, and really I think kind of the back half of the year overall, a lot of those names on defense were the ones we were kind of talking about the most in a positive light, right? Mainly like Leonard Floyd, for example, is the one that kind of sticks out for me. So a guy like that to me is kind of like one of those like really big names kind of gone and maybe more notable than the others. I don't know, outside of maybe Diggs, guys for you guys who stick out as well that are no longer with the team.
Yeah, Diggs and Gabe Davis are obviously they were their two leading receivers in terms of yards, and Diggs in terms of touchdowns. But as we talked about a lot last year, Gabe Davis was like just nowhere to be found in a lot of those games late in the year, and it was really like a guy like Khalil Shakir who kind of emerged as a number one target for Josh Allen, which he's on this squad this year. So that's one of the guys I'm excited for. So yeah, the offense will be different with the wide receiver core, and even we forgot to mention the Bills have a new center this year as well. Mitch Morse has been there for the last several years, and now they have a new center. So then you switch over to the defensive side, yeah, like Jordan Poyer was your second leading tackler, and Leonard Floyd led the team in sacks. So yeah, it's so many different variables that are with this team, and they had trouble the last several years trying to get past some of these really good teams, and it just makes you wonder how are they going to do that with a way less experienced and less veteran guys on their roster.
It does feel from a distance like it's a step back that they've taken roster wise this year, but last year's season was not an impressive year based on expectations and based on the result of where their season ended. A guy like Tre'Davious White, he spent more time on the IR than he did on the field for the Bills over his career, and he was supposed to be one of the best cornerbacks in the league, and he was good when he was on the field, but wasn't very often. Micah Hyde and Jordan Poyer, fan favorites, but I think these safeties are almost a dime a dozen. There's a handful of them that are special. I don't know if Jordan Poyer's a special player that can't be replaced by a number of other, guys. Dane Jackson did good when he was in there, but again, none of these guys, other than maybe Leonard Floyd, truly elite. And I'm not going to talk about Stephon Diggs as being an elite player that they lost because he was awful last year, second half of the season. Who knows why, but it was always some sort of drama. He didn't produce in the big games when they needed him. They didn't throw him the ball as much. It almost seemed like sometimes they were trying to force him the ball, but if he's open, they're going to throw him the ball. Josh Allen's going to. So I don't know what was going on there, but see you later, Stephon Diggs. I don't care. Hello, Keon Coleman. Hello, Matt Collins, Curtis Samuel, and Khalil Shakir. So it's similar to this year's team offensively, at least, is similar to Kansas City's team last year, where there was no real number one guy until Rashee Rice maybe started to emerge. But there was like a handful. We got one of them in Marquez Valdez-Scantling this year on our team. But, it's still going to be a fast-paced offense, plenty of options to spread the ball around. With still got tight end positions looking pretty good. A lot of options to spread the ball around without anybody being jealous of not getting the targets, at least so far. So I think it'll work out good offensively. And of course, Cook is back, who looked really promising. And I don't think anybody's going to miss Gabe Davis. So yeah, it's a new look, but last year's look didn't result in satisfaction for Bills fans. So we'll see here. I'm a little more concerned defensively than offensively this year. But it'll be interesting to see when they open Sunday against the Cardinals.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, and you want to talk about some of those notable additions. A lot of them are, at least to me, on the offensive side of the ball more so than on the defensive side of the ball. You mentioned Mac Hollins comes over from Atlanta. By the way, have you guys seen his TikTok stuff he's been doing? It's pretty interesting.
Ian Coleman?
No,
Mac Hollins?
Mac Hollins.
He just doesn't like to wear shoes, is what I know.
Well
he wears them during the game, though, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
Waits last minute to put him on. Walks around the field with no socks, no shoes.
So him and Keon Coleman are a couple characters at least.
Yeah.
Maybe he just wants to get in touch with the ground, feel grounded before the game,
Sure.
something like that. No, he does this thing. I forget what it's technically called, but I'm not too sure what his background is, academia speaking, but he knows his way around the house doing like trade work. It's actually pretty interesting. He has like a bunch.
contracting stuff? Like,
Sort of, but like he kind of shows like how to like fix outlets, stuff like that. It's kind of interesting if I'm being completely honest.
does
But,
he wear shoes when he does it?
actually, no. Oddly, no, he does not.
Always barefoot.
He's barefoot, but he's wearing like one of those giant shop style suits,
Yeah.
like the jumpsuit type thing. It's cool, I think, anyway.
I'll
But
look for him.
Curtis Samuel, you mentioned him a little bit already, Jim, coming over from Washington. Lyle Collins comes over from Cincinnati. He was part of the Cowboys offensive line a few years ago that was considered one of the best of all time, let alone in the past decade or so. Marquez Valdez-Scantling, Keon Coleman, as we mentioned already, coming in through the draft, rookie from Florida State. And then defensively, like I said, there's not a ton. Like Casey Tuchel, defensive end from Washington, Kareem Jackson, safety from Houston. It's one of those things where it's, they kind of for sure got this revamped offense, right? And you have at least faces to names, but on defense, not quite as much. There's a lot to maybe be desired, and maybe it's one of those things where they feel it out a little bit here in the first couple weeks and maybe go from there. But you certainly would rather have maybe a little bit more firing power immediately on the defensive side, like we were kind of talking about on the offensive side, replacing people that were there.
Yeah, I think it's mostly the secondary that a lot of us would be concerned with. We already mentioned the three main guys earlier, and they do have a lot of notable names and names we've seen before, but even like Taylor Rapp would be a starting safety come this Sunday, where he really didn't get that role unless there was an injury. So that's just kind of the unknowns. Like you're kind of seeing guys that you've seen, but now they're going to be playing on the field all the time, and they're going to be starters. And you haven't seen enough for them to feel that confidence as you would with those veteran guys that we've been seeing.
And then
Kareem Jackson is a veteran that they brought in, to replace probably Poyer. Where Poyer played.
Yeah.
So
on the depth chart, they have DeMar Hamlin starting at the safety, along with Taylor Rapp.
Wow.
Over Kareem Jackson.
Yep. On the depth chart right now, and they have Christian Benford playing corner and Taron Johnson. So.
Yeah, it's not going to strike fear into the hearts of opposing quarterbacks, I don't think.
Yeah. Like, for example, when they, their schedules, I don't know if you've looked at it, their schedule's tough for the first 6 weeks or so. Yeah. They're going to face a lot of good offenses. You just wonder how they're going to match up, especially against, like, Houston in week 6, is it? I think.
Yep.
Is Diggs going to have his
week 5? Apologies.
Coming back party? It's not in Buffalo, but Diggs going to have a huge day? I don't know. The secondary just worries me.
Yeah,
it really does.
Can the Bills outscore teams might be the theme of this season.
Should also mention Russell Douglas, though, is also part of that starting group,
mm-hmm.
and he was good at taking the ball away last year.
Yep.
So that's a good veteran guy that I'd want.
Yeah, I mean, Douglas mid-year acquisition last year comes over.
Yep.
Definitely immediate impact as well last year, goes without saying. Yeah, I think I want to throw this kind of in here right now because we're on the mind of defense. We're kind of going over some things in the offseason, right? And one of the big things as it stands right now is Matt Milano out with injury, and who, I mean, in this hypothetical sense, going into week 1, if he was, say, healthy and ready to go, probably the for sure defensive leader veteran-wise on this team as it stood at that point. And now you're kind of without, like I mentioned, that presence. It does make you wonder a little bit too within that core, kind of, who maybe steps up and takes that on-field role until Milano gets back.
Yeah, Dorian Williams is going to have to step in. He played more towards the end of last year because of the same injuries. Matt Milano fractured his leg last year. That's a guy, you kind of mentioned Trey White earlier, that's never on the field. It seems like Matt Milano hasn't been on the field much the last two and a half years. So, yeah, it's going to be Terrell Bernard and Dorian Williams. I'd rather have it, be Matt Milano and Terrell Bernard, but we'll see if Dorian can step up until I think he gets back maybe around December. I wouldn't say he's going to be out the whole year. Hopefully not.
December.
Kind of basically like last year. He fractured his leg earlier in the year, and he came back late and was part of the playoff run. I guess it wasn't really a run because they didn't make it far, but yeah, so that's kind of a question mark too. Your other linebacker is Dorian Williams. Not great.
Yeah, defensively seems to be where the concerns are, but like I said, a lot of times you look at fantasy football obviously has nothing to do with real football in terms of the X's and O's, but
It's real to me.
when you look at the players that you draft, you're drafting them on statistical value, and I don't think guys like Curtis Samuel are going very high. I don't think like guys like Mac Hollins, maybe his draft stock's gone up a little bit if you just look at their average draft position in these fantasy drafts. Because Khalil Shakur, he seems to be one of the first guys off the board from the receiving core, along with Keon Coleman. And then Cook has been pretty highly targeted in leagues too. So, and of course Allen. I think offensively they're going to be fine and they're going to score a lot of points. It's just can they score more than the other team?
Yeah.
Or maybe the defense surprises us. That's the thing. We'll see what happens. Against a 4-win team from last year in Arizona that's coming in with a lot of high expectations.
Yeah, honestly, if they can just be middle of the pack, the defense, average, and the Bills' offense, does spread the ball around and put up points, I think they'll be okay. And they'll surprise a lot more people and win more games. And I'm even probably projecting them to win.
Yeah, I think that's the theme of the season. So, load up on Buffalo's Bills offensive players if you haven't had your fantasy draft yet, which most people probably have because it's season starts in 2 days.
I still got 2.
I got my only one tonight. One league I'm in, and it's been going on for 6 years, same group. That's tonight.
On the cutting edge originally there, huh? For fantasy, 25 years? I mean,
at least.
Yeah.
I mean, early mid-90s. First year might have been like 96 or 97. But my first ever fantasy football team was 1990 or 91.
love it.
And with our first round pick, we took Barry Foster from the Steelers, who was the NFL's leading rusher the year before. Well, it was a huge bust, and I learned real quickly that I didn't know what I was doing.
Was he one of the Penn State running backs? Not to get off topic.
Barry, I don't know where he went,
Maybe
but he led the NFL in rushing yards the year before. We drafted him like 3rd pick overall, and he was a huge bust, and our team was terrible.
Brutal scenes. There is one before we kind of really push into like the season outlook here a little bit more. One thing I wanted to bring up defensively, linebacker Joe Andreessen from the University of Buffalo kid, went to Lancaster, I believe, right? I think I got that right. I don't know when the picture was exactly taken, but it's in the past couple of years seen tailgating outside as a college student. Gets signed on as an undrafted free agent and makes the 53-man roster. One of those things that you want to look for at least some sort of feel-good story going on with the Bills, and maybe that defense specifically. Football Joe, as they call him, might be that guy.
And you're going to have opportunity maybe to see time on the field immediately with the Milano injury. So, who knows? There might be names that, we're going to be talking about in a whole different light 6 weeks from now.
Yeah. There always tends to be that case, especially early on in the football season.
That's what's exciting about new seasons.
Yeah.
And one other defensive guy that I want to talk about quick is, can Von Miller show up this year? I think Von Miller, if he can get back to his old self a little bit and put more pressure on a quarterback along with Greg Russo, I think this defensive line could be better, but it's really up to Von Miller. Von Miller just didn't do anything last year. It's very disappointing considering how much money they gave him.
Yeah, dealing with injuries and then obviously off the field stuff. We didn't really see him until December, and that's even being generous with that. So I know he's been in the headlines for trying to at least hype up what the Bills have defensively. So maybe that's a sign of things to come, like you're mentioning, Kyle. Him getting the voice here early on. All right, let's take a look more at this outlook. AFC, as we mentioned, kind of it's the Chiefs, and then it's kind of everybody else in the eyes of the bettors and stuff like that. If you want to look at AFC East, it's the Jets, and then right on their heels, it's the Bills, apparently, if you take a look at the lines and stuff like that. So people still are viewing the Bills as being a threat of sorts, but as we kind of touched on already, compared to last year, not as much. Definitely teams that have surpassed them and gone above them are taking their place. Bills kind of taking a little bit of that step back, proverbially speaking. But I'm kind of with you, Jim. You mentioned it, right? As long as I think this offense kind of clicks and puts up some points, and you just need the defense to do what I call bend, don't break. You know, in the NFL, you can at least make some noise and make a run kind of doing that and getting away with it.
Just scary because, what year is Josh Allen now? He was drafted.
Isn't this year 7 now?
7 or 8, yeah.
So, like, how big is the window for the Super Bowl for the Bills under Josh Allen? I mean, certainly plenty of years left, but I would say the last 3 years have been prime Josh Allen years, maybe even 4 years. And they haven't got it done. They haven't even gotten to a Super Bowl, let alone win one. Josh Allen's supposed to be the answer to Patrick Mahomes. Since then, now you got C.J. Stroud, you got Joe Burrow. Lamar Jackson's still hanging around too, but he's had more success than Allen has in his career. So when are the Bills going to take advantage of having this elite, top-tier quarterback before it's too late?
Yeah, and this, excuse me, this roster just doesn't seem like the roster that's going to get him over the hump. I mean, like I mentioned earlier, all these past rosters have had so many, veteran, really good guys that have won so many different awards in their careers, like especially defensively, and, they still don't get over the hump. It's like, how are they going to do it this year with all the guys that they have now? Maybe the only thing I can think of is maybe, without Stephon Diggs and all these young guys, Josh will be able to spread the ball around, and he'll have less pressure. He'll maybe take care of the ball a little more, and
less drama in the locker room.
Yeah,
whatever it was with him and Diggs, they didn't like each other. I don't care what anybody says or what they say. I guess there's clearly they weren't clicking on a personal level.
Yeah, so maybe it'll just be more smooth sailing, and
right.
He'll just play more free, but take care of the ball more too, because that's kind of an issue that's always talked about. Even though he puts up insane numbers every year, leads a lot of categories, but sometimes there's just one interception in a game. It's like, man, just hold the ball and don't try to force it downfield to Diggs. And this year, he shouldn't have that problem.
I just remember when Diggs came on in the offseason, everybody was like, whoa, this is what the Bills needed. Now they got the true number one all-pro wideout to go with Allen, and there's nothing going to stop them here. In that first year, they did make a pretty good, their best run yet. But ever since, which was 2 years ago? 2 seasons ago or 3 seasons ago?
I think it was 3.
Yeah, and since then, it's just progressively gotten a little worse to where now they ship Diggs off to Houston, and they're kind of rebranding their offense a little bit.
Yeah, because I remember the first year they had Cole Beasley, John Brown, and who am I forgetting? Emmanuel Sanders. Am I forgetting another one? That was a year that I thought, wow, even those guys, like, they're not superstars, and like Emmanuel Sanders was older, but that's a wide receiver core that you should be able to go far with, and they did, and then they got stopped. So it just, no matter what they have, I just don't know how they're going to go back to where they've been with the roster they have right now.
And with that being said, is McDermott on the hot seat this year?
Yeah, he signed.
He got on the hot seat a little last year, midseason, boy. People were like, we've had enough of Sean McDermott. Time to move on. And here he is back for another year. I think this is kind of a make or break year. Not saying he has to win the Super Bowl, but I think they got to win the division, and they got to get to the AFC Championship game. Anything less than that, and I think there's going to be a strong case for maybe moving on to a different head coach.
Yeah, the only reason I would be hesitant on that is just because he signed through 2027. I know teams move on early all the time, but then I feel like they're also going to be like, well, they won the division 4 straight years up until this year, so why would we move on? I don't know. I'm not disagreeing with you, and I think he could be on the hot seat. I'm wondering if they would just be hesitant to do it.
Some organization, like if you're Jerry Jones was the owner of the Bills, then he'd probably be gone. Would have been gone last year, but so it's nice to see an organization stick with a guy. It's just from a fan perspective, there's a lot of frustration because again, 3-4 years ago when we realized Josh Allen was this next level talent and that they really hit the lottery with that draft pick out of college. It hasn't delivered what the Bills fans want, which, let's face it, it's a Super Bowl title. The Bills have never won the Super Bowl. Anything short of that is going to be, they're going to be building towards it. And if they can't get to it in the next few years with Josh Allen, I mean, you're going to probably start to see serious regression in the organization because they're put a lot into, making it happen. And it certainly didn't happen last year. Disappointing year overall last year. So if this year is, maybe they don't win the division, they're not favored to win the division.
It's similar in a way to me, and I'm going to equate this out to a baseball team in comparison here. And maybe, Kyle, you might need to check me on this one, admittedly. Kind of Seattle Mariner-like right now. The Mariners went into this past season with a lot of expectation, expecting to make that leap, and they didn't this year. And Scott Service, their now former manager, gets fired mid-year because wheels were spinning and sputtering, and they have a lot invested in their young core, headlined by a guy like Julio Rodriguez, and now they're stuck.
I think what could get McDermott fired is if they don't make the playoffs. I think they still think they're a playoff team, which, again, for us, on the pod and fans in general, that's not good enough because, like you said, they never won a Super Bowl. But I think for some reason that's going to be okay with them. And if they don't make it far in the playoffs, he'll be back.
There's a lot of franchises that is okay for, and they kill for that. But, I envision I'm not making a prediction, but let's just say the Bills come in second or even third in the division because the Jets and Dolphins both have a case to be better. And then wild card berth and a loss in the first round.
Yep.
Jeez, I don't know, man. I think they'd move on, especially maybe looking at who's out there in the market. I mean, Jim Harbaugh became available this year. That would have been, if the Bills were coming off the type of season I just described, I think there would have been a lot of clamoring to hire Harbaugh, or there's always names on the coaching market. So, and Sean McDermott is an overall unproven talent. Like guys like Mike Tomlin, as mediocre as they might appear, he's won a Super Bowl.
It's true.
Yeah,
and this might be a good spot to really kind of come up with the schedule element of this, because I know, Kyle, you said the first month is tough, but I look at this schedule overall, and it's a tough one period this year.
It's the NFL, man. Everybody's schedule is tough. Some divisions are tougher than others, admittedly. But, any given week, any given team can be any given team. I don't care if it's Carolina and San Francisco. It's a really, really tough league, and they've added another game, right?
Yeah.
And it's just a tough league and a tough grind. And, a lot of it has to do with staying healthy. You could argue that the one reason the Bills didn't achieve last year was because of injuries. So there's a lot of intangibles too. But tough schedule, yeah.
I just view it as they don't really have an out this first part of the year until Tennessee in week 7.
Well, you better win week 1 against Arizona at home, right?
Correct.
And that's not a gimme. A lot of people, Arizona's like a sleeper darling of a lot of bettors.
Yeah.
Yeah, so 4 of their first 6 games are on the road, and 4 of their first 6 games are at night. How about that for a start to the season? Mm-hmm. So you got to go and take care of business on the road against the Dolphins, the Ravens, the Texans, and the Jets.
In a primetime environment.
Yep. And we saw last year in their season opener, the Bills with their stacked roster still lose to the Jets after Rodgers went down in the first series on the road.
Yeah, that set the tone, man, early for the season for the Bills. That was a rough start.
So you got to beat the Cardinals here at home week 1.
Yep. Agree.
Yep. Let's jump into week 1 then here, as we already mentioned. The Cardinals, 101. Very interesting how they're doing the times now technically as opposed to a flat 1 o'clock.
101 kick?
101 kick.
That's so the network can go from the pregame show to the stadium, and then you got 60 seconds, and then boom. Wow. Yep. Yeah, 101, good.
So,
bring it on.
Yep, so 101, CBS, Highmark Stadium, Orchard Park. Weather at Orchard Park for Sunday, AM showers, clouds lingering in the afternoon with winds west-southwest 10 to 20 miles per hour, high of 62 degrees. really big fall feeling for early September in Buffalo. The Arizona Cardinals, 4-13 in 2023. Bills are 5.5-point favorites, minus 255 on the money line. You're over under of 48.5.
That's also telling. I mean, 5.5 is a pretty big line for an NFL game, but not for a 4-win team on the road week one against a team like the Bills. You would think that line might move up, or it should be like maybe it's at least 7.5. So that's telling too.
Yeah. It's interesting because they're more or less are saying, when I always see something like this, they're saying the Bills more or less by 6 points, a normal touchdown type deal, obviously, in this scenario, which could obviously happen. We had a lot of this happen last year where we were looking at it. It's like, yeah, the Bills should easily cover that, and they never really did or anything like that. It makes me wonder now. Admittedly, they've had some week one lines up for a little while now. Didn't do this, probably my bad on the research department part. I would have loved to know what the line actually opened at. Because I'm with you, Jim. I would have been more likely to have seen that probably sitting at 7.5, to be quite honest. I don't know. So maybe there is some money coming in on the Arizona side of things more so than the Bills side as it stands
They
right
do
now.
have it at minus
in that
118,
sense.
right? Minus
Yeah.
118
Yeah.
for odds. So, but yeah, it's so funny, all this talk and hype leading up to the NFL season. Then after week one, the narratives all change immediately. You know, it's almost like we talk about, on our betting podcast about the best opportunity maybe in future betting coming after week 1 or 2.
Yeah.
So because you get it, remember, Kansas City lost to Detroit week 1, and all of a sudden, everybody's down on Kansas City, and they end up winning the Super Bowl.
Yep. Yeah. It's tough to kind of really gauge anything out on week 1, to be quite honest, right? I mean, we may be coming into next week, and the highlight of the game may, even though we were just dunking on them, may as well just be the defense, right? Maybe they go out and have four sacks with 2 interceptions and stuff like that, and we're just like, well, I guess we have to eat words for admittedly a little bit until we see more. But week 1's always the toughest for me, no matter the sport or the first games, whatever you want to look at it, just because you don't really know what you're getting, right? Preseason's always a mixed bag because you have guys who just want to make sure they're getting their own reps in. You have guys who are obviously going out there to hope and try and make the team. Guys who maybe know they're not going to make the team are out there auditioning to hopefully have another deal pop up with another team, so you never fully know what you're going to get. As of right now, we know who the rosters are on each side, so you kind of know what to expect. It's easy to kind of maybe buy into a little bit too of this quarterback type game. It's Josh Allen versus Kyler Murray. Both are pretty obviously big names, all things considered, for better or worse in certain situations. It's one of those games where I view it as like kind of a little bit of a toss-up feel in a way. If you were to tell me one thing, I'd believe it. If you were to tell me another thing, I'd believe it. We're sitting here on Tuesday previewing it, and who knows what might change between now and Sunday at 1:01 p.m.
The Cardinals' offense is going to be interesting. Obviously, Kyler Murray's going to run a lot, but then they have James Conner, who has proved himself over the years. Marvin Harrison Jr. Zay Jones is suspended though for the first 5 games. That's a loss for them.
Yeah.
Well, it is considering what their other wide receivers are. I mean, who's Greg Dortch or Dortch?
Oh, Dortch.
Who's Zach Pascal, Michael Wilson, Chris Moore? Just average guys.
Yeah.
So I just think Zay Jones would be a good number 2 for them. So it is kind of a loss.
They got their tight end, McBride, there.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
He's really good.
Yeah. And
Dortch fantasy darling last year.
Yeah, maybe I'll draft him tonight.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so I don't know. Yeah, I'm with you. I don't know what to expect, and you don't know what to expect with the Bills in general. So I think you just sit back and see what unfolds, but don't really necessarily go by the week 1 result, like you said.
Yeah.
If they lose, it's going to be frustrating, but if they win, you also don't know what team they're going to be either yet.
You can't make a determination on the overall quality of the team based on this 1 week, although with the schedule coming up in the following weeks, they're going to be digging themselves a hole early if they can't get this home win
Yep.
On Sunday against the Cardinals.
And remember, it's a short turnaround too. They play the Dolphins Thursday night, so they're playing Sunday, Thursday. Not much rest. I know it's early in the season. I'm just saying, you know.
Dolphins also have the same short turnaround. They'll play Sunday. They
Yeah.
must be playing Sunday too.
Yep.
So
who do they play?
but they got to go down to Miami, right?
Yep.
Which
They're playing. Miami's playing Jacksonville on 1:00 on Sunday.
101.
That's
right.
At home. So yeah, Miami will be home for the first couple.
Remember, the Bills got the big win against Miami at the end of the last season that they really needed.
Yeah.
So yeah, maybe a little too harsh on them last year. I mean, they had a lot of injuries, but
Yeah, but I go back to someone you brought up, Jim, and that's fair, but the expectation still was lingering the whole year of like they should have been better than they were.
yeah, Bills fans want a Super Bowl contender.
Yeah.
And rightfully so. I mean, they had to suffer. I mean, so many football fans would have killed for the type of run that the Bills had in like the when was it? Early 90s?
Yeah.
Where they went to Super Bowl 4 straight years. Was it 4 straight years?
Yep.
You guys might not even have been alive, but I remember those.
I was coming in through the back door at the end of it.
Jim Kelly and Thurman Thomas and company, Andre Reed, and not to ever get the ring. And then since then, it's just been a slog, really, of years where they weren't Super Bowl contenders until recently, till Josh Allen comes to town, and all of a sudden we're Super Bowl contenders again. And we're going to win it this time, and it's just like it seems like it's regressed a little bit, and that's very, very frustrating for Bills fans. It's got to be that's the only thing that's the goal. That's the goal for every NFL team, but so much more for Bills fans, and it would be so much sweeter for the Bills fans. And there's been this revitalization of this Bills Mafia and the fan base with Josh Allen, and you got to deliver at some point. Look, maybe they, like I say, get to an AFC championship game and get to a Super Bowl. Most Bills fans alive today don't ever remember them being in a Super Bowl, or at least a good percentage of Bills fans today don't ever remember them being in a Super Bowl.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's, I was born in 94, the last year that they did make one of the Super Bowls.
And you don't remember that?
Very much so correct.
I was a freshman in high school, or a freshman in college in 1990 when they played the Giants, and Scott Norwood went wide right. I still remember that moment. I can see the kick and see where I was, and I remember the people I was with, and it was like, this is it, man. Super Bowl's on the line. He's going to make this, and the Bills are going to win. And he missed it. And so, and here we are, how many years later, 30 years later, still no Super Bowl.
Yeah.
Yep, and then 2 seasons ago, they were 13 seconds away from going back to the championship game and beating the Chiefs in their place.
Yep.
And who knows if they would have won the AFC championship, but at least getting there again after getting there in 2020, AFC championship, and then their defense just collapses, and
A couple bad breaks, bad luck, bad calls.
you wonder if that 2020 year is going to be the difference in the Bills ever winning a Super Bowl with Josh Allen as their quarterback. Again, They still would have had to win the championship game, but it just seemed like it was set up so well for them compared to how it is now.
And then it just ended.
Yep.
And there's so much talent now in the AFC.
Yep.
So
Even
much
Jacksonville.
young talent.
Jacksonville.
Yeah, I mean, I look at them as a sleeper this year. Trevor Lawrence, but the Jacksonville has a Super Bowl under Tom Coughlin, right? Or they've been to a Super Bowl. They lost to Carolina.
Been to it.
They lost. Wasn't Carolina Jacksonville Super Bowl and Carolina won? Who did Carolina beat in the when they won the Super Bowl?
That's a good question.
Oh, no, it says Jacksonville is one of 4 franchises that have never even played in the Super Bowl.
Okay.
Yeah, I was about to say.
Oh, it must have been an AFC championship game. All right, check that. Sorry.
Yeah.
Talking off the top of my head. I should have a laptop in front of me, too.
Shout out Mark Brunell.
Yeah, Mark Brunell. But I don't think the Jacksonville fan base is desperate or hungry, ravenous for a Super Bowl ring as Buffalo's fan base is. you know,
Yeah, and they
expectations
haven't
aren't
gotten
quite
that
as high.
close either the last few years like the Bills have, where they haven't been teased almost, I guess
Yeah.
the word would be. So, like, you're almost there, you're almost at the finish line, and you just keep falling short every year. And the Bills,
But if you look at those Buffalo Super Bowl teams, um, you know, can Keon Coleman be Andre Reed? You know, like 5 years from now, are we going to be like talking about Keon Coleman as the best thing since like sliced bread and like the number one, you know, one of the Hall of Fame receiver candidate and you know, a top tier receiver in the NFL? You know, Josh Allen certainly can be put on the same level as Jim Kelly from those teams. You know, James Cook, Thurman Thomas, probably not. Trying to think of who else was on those teams. It was really defensively. Like,
Bruce.
is there a Bruce Smith on this team? Probably not. Probably not. So, yeah, who knows? But was there a Bruce Smith on Kansas City last year?
No.
You know, was there an Andre Reed on Kansas City? Was there a Thurman Thomas? None of those things. So maybe that analogy doesn't really hold true.
Yeah.
You know, Isaiah Pacheco is not Thurman Thomas, and Rashee Rice is not Andre Reed.
Yeah, I mean, Chiefs have been the epitome of a lot of bend don't break type defense and offense, especially last year compared to the other ones that they've had. I don't even know how to fully describe it, but they got it done.
Is there a Don Beebe on this year's team?
There we go. All right, let's before we get out of here, let's just do our predictions for Week 1 then. What do we got?
I'll start.
Okay.
I think the Bills will win 27-23, so they won't cover.
They will go over, though, if that's your right. 27-23 would put them at 50. The
yeah, they'll go
over-under
over. Yep,
is
they'll go
what? 48 and a half?
Yep. I had it at 48 earlier, so yeah. Yep, I think it'll be close. I don't think this will be a blowout on either side.
I got Bills 23-17 win. I think it goes under. They technically cover the spread, but I think Arizona hangs with them.
I think it's a tough opener for the Cardinals. I'm going to go Bills 38, Arizona 23.
All right.
Lots of offense. That'd be fun.
Yeah, I think that's going to be a theme of the year because until I see this Bills defense, you know, stop somebody, I'm going to assume that the Bills are going to need to score over 30 points to win every single game.
That's fair.
Yeah, I don't know if this is a sleeper pick, but Dalton Kincaid is the guy that I'm watching this year.
Yeah.
I think he's going to have a big year, and I think he's going to be Josh Allen's one of his favorite targets. And I'll even make this prediction. I don't know if it's a hot take, but he'll finish with more catches than Keon Coleman will.
I like
Catches.
that.
Maybe
Receptions,
more catches, yeah,
not
maybe
yards.
Not yards. Keep
Receptions.
Coleman will be a deep threat, but yeah, I think that in today's NFL, you need a reliable tight end, a top tier tight end to be successful.
He had the second most receptions last year. Kincaid did, even with Diggs and Davis.
And Shakir.
Yep.
I think Shakir might lead in receptions. Coleman might lead in yards. But I think for this team to truly be Super Bowl level team, Keon Coleman has to pay off in a big way. You never know. Like, at the end of this year, we're going to look at this rookie crop of wide receivers, whether it's from Rome Odunze to, everybody that just came into the league. And some of them are going to be, not even starting next year or maybe not even rostered. And some of them some 4th or 5th round picks might end up being like guys that you're going to draft in the 2nd round of your fantasy draft. Really volatile when it comes to rookie wide receivers coming into the league. You look at last year, guys like, Tank Dell, or there's just so many names of rookie receivers that you don't think about until week 6 or 7 of the season. You realize, man, this guy's legit.
Yeah. I mean, there's a lot of different X factors going in for the Bills this year that hopefully they come out on the positive side of things as opposed to the negative. But I do like that, though, by you, Kyle. I've been lingering on that, especially we saw when he was healthy, what Kincaid could do in that offense. So
And remember, he didn't even start the year as the starter. They had Dawson Knox starting because we were talking about that. We're like, where's Kincaid the first 3-4 weeks?
Right.
It's nowhere to be found. And they started realizing, like, oh, wow, we need this guy on the field.
Yeah.
And I think it took, didn't Dawson Knox have an injury maybe for a week or two that put him on the field? Yeah, so.
Yeah, Kincaid better long term, better near term than Knox.
But they gave Knox all that money, which I
Yeah.
didn't really understand. Extending him and then drafting a tight end.
Yeah, that was a strange move.
Yeah.
I mean, they could have drafted a wide receiver last year. Well, no, I mean it all worked out. I think I agree. Kincaid is that George is the Bills' George Kittle, right?
Yeah.
It should be. Gonna need to be. Well, it's his first season before the kickoff Sunday. So who's going to lead the Bills in receiving yards, receptions, rushing yards? We know who's going to lead in passing yards, but is Josh Allen going to average 40 rushing yards a game? 50? Is he still going to run, or now that he's getting more mature, is he let's talk about some of that stuff quick before we get out of here.
Well,
so it's on record.
Yeah, the Allen thing. I'll jump in before going to you on that, Kyle. That's the interesting part because I'd say at the start of last year he was really smart about. I thought he finally took a little bit of a corner.
And we complained about it. We said that's why they're not winning.
Correct. And then there was, as the year went on, there were still moments where I'm like, I'll learn to go down every now and then. Just elements of that type of deal. I think though, I know it's going to be kind of like the softball pick in a way. I mean, unless he gets hurt, I don't see a way it's not James Cook.
Yeah, James Cook will lead in rushing yards.
The receiving part's where it gets interesting. I'm with Kyle. I think Kincaid gets at least the reception portion of it. I'm going to go yardage. I'm going to go Coleman. I know it's chalky, but I think if the Bills want to have that winning season, a successful season, a playoff guarantee type season, those are the guys who you expect to show up. They do show up. So that's what I'm going to go with.
I want it to be Coleman. I think for the Bills to be good, it needs to be Coleman, but I kind of feel like it's Shakir. And if it is Shakir, that's great, but they're not going to be as dynamic or explosive enough to be a Super Bowl team. It's like Shakir is this reliable guy, and every team has him, but those teams that have these check down guys and slot guys, they also have the stud, on the outside that you can throw it up to in the end zone, or it can break out the deep ball, and it's always yapping in the press conferences. I mean, so I feel like it'll be Shakir, but I think it needs to be Coleman, or at least they need to be on the same kind of level statistically.
Yeah, I agree with you. I was going to say I think Shakir ends up with the most receiving yards. I think Coleman will still have a nice rookie year. It's just I think Shakir is going to get the more yards after catch. I don't know if you remember, but while they were right after they drafted him, a lot of people are talking about his separation issues. Again, who knows if that's going to play a role here, but is Keon Coleman going to be able to, get enough separation down the field as Khalil Shakir did last year? He got a lot of yards after catch last year.
Yeah, Shakir is amazing.
So that just makes me think that the receiving yards will rack up more because of the yards after catch. But I still think Coleman will play a big role, and yeah, Kincaid will lead in receptions, and the leading rusher, will be James Cook. And I do think Josh Allen has to run. We saw, like we mentioned, with Ken Dorsey running the offense, he was not running, and there was so many 3-and-outs because they weren't having him run ever. So when he runs, he extend plays and keeps, the drive going so many times. I think he has to do that again.
And he's smart when he runs. Like, I really believe that, guys like him and Mahomes, they got to rush. And in today's NFL, almost all teams have a quarterback who's a threat on the ground. Not all,
Murray,
but
they're going to face week
they're
one.
Face one of them there. The new guys coming in the league like Caleb Williams. That's kind of the MO that the league has changed. You don't have the Dan Fouts', and Dan Marino's. You got these guys that are a threat, to take off running at any moment, or even have design plays for them to run. Yeah, but it is telling though that we didn't mention anything about Matt Collins on the field.
Or Marquez Valdes-Scantling or Curtis Samuel.
Or Curtis Samuel, who was the big signing.
They have a lot of options.
Yeah. I'm not really excited about Samuel or Valdez-Scantling, but
Scantling drops too many.
yeah, big ones.
He did in preseason. I know it's the preseason, but it just kind of shows you what he is. Like, even in a preseason game, he's dropping wide open passes. It's like, come on, you can't be doing this in a big game like Diggs did.
Like, yeah.
Remember when Diggs dropped the ball in the playoff game?
Oh my God,
Deep
yeah.
down the field?
Yep.
That can't be happening.
Yeah, that was brutal. That was probably the play that sent him packing for good.
Yep.
I legally can't speak of anything about Curtis Samuel. So,
Hey, on a side note, do you think your Redskins are going to have more or less wins than last year?
so they had 4 last year. I do think they get more this year, but I don't think it's by a ton. I don't know. My expectations are very low.
You're not excited about your quarterback situation this year compared to last year? You were a Sam Howell fan.
I mean, it's just tough because Daniels will be starting quarterback. What is it? Number 20.
Since Joe Theismann?
Is he
Broke his
24?
leg?
No. He might be Daniels, I think, might be starting quarterback 24 in 24 years.
Sounds about right.
Yeah, like
Can't think of any of them.
we love mocking the Browns, but even the Browns at least had guys start consecutive seasons compared to Washington. So, but yeah, I mean, I don't know, it's tough. I've always said in a lot of ways you can only be as good as the fat guys in front of you. So,
I know we'll talk more about this Thursday, but you see the Jets are plus 165 to win the AFC East,
Yep.
and the Bills are plus 195.
Yeah, it's
But
crazy.
then the Bills have the 8th best Super Bowl odds, and the Jets have the 10th best. So
Yeah.
I know that's just sometimes how it lines up, but I guess they think the Bills could make it further in a playoff push than the Jets, apparently.
Maybe it's the idea that, the grind of the season will
Yeah.
beat down Aaron Rodgers a little bit.
Yeah.
But, I don't see Aaron Rodgers going unscathed through the whole season.
no.
So that alone would let me lean towards the Bills.
He's
But, on the other hand, the Jets had a reasonable season without him. I mean, they got so much talent.
yeah, I mean, it's just tough. The guy's 40 years old. More or less playing
OTAs.
on one leg. I mean, all things considered.
Yeah, but he did have the darkness retreat.
Yeah, and good for him.
It helps you, right?
Sure. I mean, I don't know.
Hey, unpopular.
I can't say the joke on here that I want to say.
You want to know what I think?
Yeah.
And Bills fans aren't going to want to hear it, but the Miami Dolphins might have the best shot at winning the division and going deeper in the Super Bowl. They have exciting pieces throughout the offense. They've got a little more. They definitely have a more solid defense than the Bills do on paper. But you have Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle, Devin A-Chain, and Tua. I mean, there's a lot to be excited for if you're a Dolphins fan. And the Bills have Mac Hollins and Curtis Samuel.
Yeah. No, I mean, I brought that up on last Thursday's betting podcast, even how I think the Dolphins, I know for the most part the odds are relatively compact compared to where the Patriots sit, at least for division champion, but, I kind of laughed at the books having the Dolphins be the third, longest odds for the division. Like, I
don't mean to trash Mac Hollins. Yeah. I think Mac Hollins might have a good year. I don't know. We'll see. Mac Hollins could be he could be the Khalil Shakir of this year. Not saying Shakir won't do it, but Mac Hollins could be the guy that emerges to be a consistent producer in this offense. I don't see it being MVS or Curtis Samuel.
Yeah. All right. I say we get out of there on that note.
Yeah.
You guys agree? All right.
Yep.
So, all right. So, thanks, guys. Appreciate it. And thanks, everybody else, for listening and watching. You can find Bills Weekly here on FingerLakes1.com, the F1 YouTube channel, and all other major podcasting platforms, including Spotify and Amazon Music. We'll be back at it next Monday, 10 a.m., back to our normally regular scheduled time.
There's a lot to talk about then.
Yes. Well, hopefully there's a lot to talk about.
Well, there will be one way or another.
Exactly. So, until then, let's go Buffalo. We'll talk again Monday morning, everybody.